The debate between pro-war and anti-war Iranians has gotten really toxic. They don't debate, they don't talk, they just hurl insults at each other. They call each other traitor or treacherous. They call each other all sorts of nasty names. A lot of references to women's lower bodies in the insults that I receive sometimes on social media. I'm Borzu Deragahi, and I'm the founder of the newsletter Badlands, and you can subscribe at borzou.substack.com. Recently, I met someone on Twitter who goes by the name Warren McCammon, who is an Iranian living in the diaspora, and we kind of chatted a little bit. I think the first thing he said to me is that my take on something was retarded, quote unquote. But in any case, we talked and we communicated and we agreed to a short debate about the issue of Iran and where it's going to go from now, and whether there is a kind of space where people can talk and discuss things amicably, and whether there's any common ground. And what follows is our brief debate.
So I just want to ask you some questions to take it short, because I know that you have to go, so I have to go 20 minutes, something like that. But so my first question is, why do you think that this was wrong? Because I check your articles and watch your debate, but I didn't see like any arguments that actually is legit to say, okay, that war might possibly be wrong, because it doesn't have like the goals that. Because the only thing that you brought up, I just want to say, is about like the U.S. and Israel cannot bring democracy to Iran, because it's not actually the goal to bring democracy. I think it's actually eliminating the threat, and then the Iranian people are going to, bring the democracy themselves by toppling the regime, and the deflection forces just join the people.
Okay, well, I will just say that based on my experiences, and this has been a kind of lifelong learning experience, the U.S., any place that it touches militarily, it turns into a nightmare. And I think that goes even more so for Israel. This kind of military adventure, it makes a lot of people in the arms industries very wealthy. It creates a lot of havoc and pain and agony for the people who are beneath the bombs, but it doesn't end up with anything decent for the people in those countries. And I am someone who has been with the Iraqi Kurds as they, celebrated the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, and then watched the country just descend into hell in the coming years. I was with the Iranians when I'll skip that part, but I was with the Libyans when they stormed into Bab al-Azizia with NATO weaponry helping them, and took control of the Libyan capital, and then watched them celebrate for a year, and then all of a sudden the country turned into a civil war that continues right now. I was with the Syrian rebels. I was embedded with the Syrian rebels as they were fighting Bashar al-Assad with weapons provided in part through the U.S., through other countries as well. And I saw how their hope turned into this kind of weapon, a cynical weapon used by external powers, not just the U.S., but the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Turkey as well, that eventually destroyed the country and handed it to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the equivalent of Al-Qaeda. So I'm extremely suspicious of this.
Okay, so just going through these three things. So first of all, Libya didn't have a leader. Syria didn't have actually a leader for the people to gather around him, and who's going to be like a trustworthy one for for their entire nation to have a successful movement against the current state, which was Bashar al-Assad, or even we can say about Iraq, which the Iraqi courts were under the suppression of the Saddam regime, so they wanted self-determination. What I want to say is that the U.S. actually put the boots on the ground in those three countries, but in Iran, Trump is smart enough to see that the situation is like something that the people are just ready for the new government. They've selected their leader. They know the path through overthrowing the entire regime. But the thing is that the regime, you know, is actually having the arms, and the people cannot, like, the people don't have the arms. Also, the culture shift is important as well, because in Iraq, Syria, and Libya, those people were still Islamists, but in Iran, people are largely abandoning Islam and just becoming westernized like they were pre 79, because the westernized identity was still there. But the Islamists tried to erase that, but they didn't succeed because they still remembered what was under the Shah. So that's why Iran is totally different, and it's not comparable with those three situations. Actually, Iran is comparable with France, because the Islamic Republic is the occupational regime, like the Nazi Germany when they invaded France for 3.5 years, but they're invading Iran for 47 years and 2 months or something. So that's why I'm saying. So they are that's like occupying force, and this is like exactly like the how the France regime just changed by the U.S. It's not going to be boots on the ground this time, but the France regime just got changed and it became much better than it was under Nazi Germany.
I would dispute a lot of what you said, and so let's go through it. I've actually met Reza Pahlavi, and I found him very unimpressive, and I found him someone who, unfortunately, he did have the kind of role in which he could play a leader. I don't think he has any leadership aspirations. Actually, I seriously doubt that he even wants this. I think that he would be, and I hate to say this, and I don't want to insult anyone, but I think that he would be. I think he would be somewhat afraid of going into the Iran that is the Iran right now. I would also dispute that um, Iran is that much different than its neighbors. Unfortunately, I think that if I've been to
Fortunately, actually, not unfortunately, because we are abandoning
I'm
Islam.
saying that it's
We are not
that
Muslim anymore.
I disagree with that. I mean, I'm not Muslim, but I've spent a lot of time in Iran. There are a lot of secular people. There are a lot of people who are very, very religious as well. And if you go,
There
for
are not
example,
that much people, like less than 25%, because like according to Gaman data, because Gaman is like much independent and they're not in favor of Pahlavi. Actually, Ammar Maliki is very anti-Pahlavi, and the survey that they had in the past like 5 years, it was like always like 40% under like 37%. Even the most attendance to the survey were men, and we know that Iranian women are less religious than Iranian men. So I'm talking by data, not talking by just some,
well, I'm talking by,
personal experiences.
I mean,
And like the
40% is
number just got
significant as
decreased
well.
because the older generation died and the newer generation are barely even Muslim, because none of the people, Gen Alpha people in my family at least, which was a very religious family, are not, none of them are Muslim. None of them is Muslim, because you see that this is the change inside Iran, and you see these very religious families are mostly boomers or Gen Xers, and the culture around millennials are totally different.
Well, I think that I think you're absolutely right that Iran is becoming less religious, but there's still a lot of really religious people. And if you
A
go any
lot, but
way,
not majority.
I don't know about that, but I've
But
been,
I'm
if you
just saying
go
by the
to,
data, because 5.5 years ago, before women life freedom, before that, so like
okay,
imagine 5.5 years ago were 40%,
okay.
and like in,
Well, I'm not
yeah,
disputing any of that. I'm just saying that there are still quite a bit of religious people. But in any case, the regime has shifted its rhetoric and center of gravity. It's this, and this I've watched for 10, 15 years as it's happened. They've gone toward nationalism. They appeal toward nationalism way more now than they do toward
so
Islamism.
what's nationalism? Could you define me how they
Iran,
actually,
just the obsession with Iran and
how
defending
are they obsessed
Iran.
with Iran? How are they obsessed with Iran? Like they ban people from going to Cyrus's graveyard, or banning Kurosh name for the children, or many other things that actually
They
abandons
don't.
people from actually learning about their culture and history and actual Iranian culture, not this Islamic occupying nationalism which got existed from Jebhe Melli, and then the Islamic Republic is actually building and like a new identity based on the Jebhe Melli nationalism, not actual Iranian nationalism based on the tradition, like the traditional culture of Iran.
Well, I mean, and I think you're right about the mosque attendance. I've seen that myself. I haven't been there in Iran for a while. I haven't been able to go, but I've seen that. Except for Fridays, and except, for example, in very traditional parts of the city, like the bazaar, very few people go to the mosque. But I don't know if that's important right now.
Yeah,
Just
no,
like
no,
I
I know
said,
you said about no, no, that's not the argument.
but I think
That's not the argument,
I'm
Borzu.
pretty sure
Yeah,
that
I was talking
I'm
about
pretty sure.
nationalism, like the definition of nationalism, because that was very interesting to me when you said the regime is becoming more nationalistic, and
Yeah.
in my mind was actually what is Iranian nationalism?
I think that's a really good question and something that is worthy of studying, and kind of defining what the crystallization of the Islamic Republic's version of nationalism is. But I would say, for example, just the obsession with the flag, with Iran, with military service, with community service, with sports teams, and emphasis on national performance in
Mm.
different arenas. Even the nuclear program, it wasn't sold on Islamic pride; it was sold on Iranian pride. This is what we did as a nation. That's how
Yeah.
they. That's how they boast about it. So the military, the regime's extreme militarism and focus on militarism has more of an Iranian character than an Islamic character. That would
So
be
let
one
me
data
just
point.
tell you about this. So first of all, the flag is not Iranian at all because you can see Allah in the middle and Allahu Akbar in the sides of the green and red part of the flag. So this is about the flag. And regarding the military, so the military, I can see in all of these anthems, the national anthems and other, that the military's duty is to protect the supreme leader, and IRGC is the main military. So IRGC is not something nationalistic because they're not serving the nation; they're serving the supreme leader. And what I want to say about, like you said, about this nationalism. So in sports, yes, they absolutely care because sports actually something it is regardless of what government is in power, because that's something that Iranians really fans of the sport, especially football and wrestling, which is a very traditional sport of Iran. But what I say is, like, what fundamentals are defining the Iranian nationalism? Because what I say is that you can, for example, say that like the like Europe, because I'm not talking about like new foundational uh, nation states like America, but I'm saying like Europe. For example, they had this Christian traditionalism for thousands of years, and then we can say about Iran. I don't know. We can say about Zoroastrianism or something that actually, it's not there for 1,400 years. But we cannot say that even about Islam as well, because the roots of Zoroastrian culture rooted in the Iranian culture and just became a part of it, regardless of uh, practicing the religion. That's what I'm citing to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, but I do agree that I will have to say that Islam and Allahu Akbar and Allah are just as much a part of the Iranian national identity as Kurosh and all this other pre-Islamic stuff. You can't just say that it's the 1,000 what is it 1,300 years under which Iran has been either Sunni or Shia or various Sufi denominations under the Muslim influence is just kind of ignorable. So I think that the nationalism is also part of the Allah on the flag is just as Iranian as the Shira Khorshid, and both are Iranian. And I say that as an outsider, sort of looking in, as someone who lived in the U.S. since I was 4 and didn't really have a kind of. I came to Iran, in 2001 as an adult and observed the culture. And I don't think you can divorce the two. But in any case,
So
let's get
how
back.
like okay, okay, sorry, because because I know you talked about that in your previous debate, but it was so interesting to me that you bring that you brought that up, like about like how Allah and Shiro Khorshid cannot be like separated, like both of them are as Iranian as each other. But what I want to say is when you say about this thing, like what you claimed, many civilizations lived under actually foreign principles. So under actually foreign forced culture.
After
So
all, it
even
didn't
under
become
Nader
foreign
Shah,
anymore.
actually, even respectfully, under Nader Shah or many other kings, we didn't have that much Islamic influence because Nader Shah was one of the last great kings who actually did a lot of conquers and is a national pride of the Iranian people. He wasn't Islamic. He actually didn't embrace Islam that much, and he was mostly built on that true face of Iranian nationalism, just like Reza Shah Pahlavi or Shahanshah Yameh. So what I say is that Islam was not separable from the Iranian culture until something like Islamic Republic came up and showed that how foreign this Islamic culture is, and the Iranians, got encouraged to get back to their original culture, which is this Iranian culture that they put that first before they embrace Islam, but now they highlight that even more than Islam and fully abandon that, fully abandon the Islamic identity and just embrace the Iranian identity that they had for a long time, but it was under the shadows.
I mean, I think that your ideas are really interesting and I think really cool and, something that is worth pursuing. But I also doubt that what you're pointing out as this kind of Iranian national impulse is enough to lead a ground movement or uprising against the Islamic Republic, at least a successful one, because the Islamic Republic is a system. It is a very, very, as you know, I can tell from your Persian accent, it's not long that you've not lived in Iran. It's probably the most controlling system in the world. It is not really Muslim to me so much as kind of a Soviet style system, except instead of a sickle and hammer, it's, the Allah.
Yes,
And so they have a incredible surveillance system, incredible um, bureaucratic system, judiciary, every single aspect from the water commission that, gets the water to the neighborhoods to the, I wrote about this once. A woman started a yoga class in north of Tehran and they called her in, Etelat called her in, and said that you can do your yoga class, but if you want to gather 20 women under a roof for 3 times a week, you have to do it at the community center, under the cultural center, under our watch. So this is how controlling this system is. And so in order to take up something like that, to take on something like that, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take real organization and a real kind of movement. And I'm not sure that what you are describing as a resentment, even if it is 100% accurate, as a resentment of the symbols and ideology of the Islamic Republic, and parts of that I see very, very well. The resentment. I'm not sure if it's as clearly defined as we want this original version of Iran versus this Islamic Republic version. I'm not sure if it's enough, even with Israeli and U.S. bombs. As a matter of fact, my worry is that the Israeli and the US bombs will band the people together more solidly with the Islamic Republic just out
so
of defense
I
and
would
terror and
agree
fear.
with, but let me cut you off.
Sure.
I would agree with you maybe like maybe like 5 years ago, even during the woman life freedom, or even you could argue that during the 12-day war, which I disagree with that time because I saw that people people's view totally changed on Israel since the October 7th, and they became more pro-Israel. But what I say is that after this January massacre, uh, we cannot even talk about like the people gathering around the Islamic Republic, the same regime that kills more than like according to Iran International, like 36 and 500,000 those two um significant days like January 8th and January 9th. So what they say is, so even you could argue that during the 12-day war, I could disagree with you, but after this massacre, the people inside Iran asked Trump and Netanyahu to bomb the hell out of the regime. And what we can see is even the infrastructure that they hit at the south parts, it was the production, like the production part of it. So because the IRGC, controls the entire economy, that's and they bomb the production part. So the production of um, those like the production part actually, production part of the infrastructure got hit, so it can be stopped for several months. So the IRGC cannot, uh, you know cannot like have more money in these months, so they are kind of in a actually a financial pause. So what I'm going to say is that this was a good move, but like it was very risky, but because it could hit the other parts of the infrastructure, and actually you know the infrastructure taking more damage. But it didn't take that, and it was a very smart move by Israel. So they bombed the production part of the you know of the south parts. So the IRGC is going to be like a broke, so they cannot provide that much uh, budget to actually suppress the people. So we can see with that, we can see with hitting the uh, we can see hitting the oil one in Tehran. So what I'm going to say is that even the infrastructures that they hit is some significant strikes that they would stop IRGC from empowering itself.
Yeah, I don't dispute that at all, and I understand the goal, and I hear the CENTCOM spin and the press releases and the conferences and so on. I would just say two things to that. Within the first few hours of the conflict, even before Iran started firing, the Americans hit a school in Minab, and that story is everywhere. It's all over the world, okay, and it's all over
Yeah,
Iran, and that had a huge
yeah.
impact. And that, I'm sure it was a mistake because I don't think that the U.S. military targets. The mistake is kind of explainable, but it still happened, and it gave the regime a lot of propaganda. And the other
Mm.
thing I would say is that it is a common myth. And then I'll say one more thing, and then I'll hand it back to you. It's a common myth that these kinds of precision strikes they give people in war rooms in the Pentagon in Florida, in CENTCOM, they give them a lot of satisfaction. In Tel Aviv, Haifa, the control rooms there get a lot of satisfaction for doing a lot of direct hits on this or that. The commanders, the pilots, they do their damage assessments. They all exaggerate up a little bit about how effective it was. And so by the time, it's a Netanyahu or Trump announcing it, it's just completely overhyped how much. It goes from like, yeah, we hit a bunch of targets, a bunch of missile launchers, to, yeah, 90% of Iran's capacity is degraded. Which brings me to my last point, then I'll hand over to you. I don't believe anything that the Iranian military says or the Iranian government. I don't believe a word that the Israeli government says. And I don't believe the word that the US government says. They're all lying at this time of war. So I would not confuse their claimed battlefield successes, whether on how much damage they did to this and what effect it had, with the truth, at least for now, because it's a time of war. And I've seen just how boldly the governments and how baldly, the governments, including my government, including the U.S., lies at a time of war.
So every government lied during wartime, and it's something really normal. But the question is, which government is more reliable to trust it? Because we trust one more than the other. even in like foreign policy, we trust, for example, one ally more than another. We choose between countries that which countries should be allies and which countries should be like our opponents. What I'm going to say is that Israel actually is the most trustworthy, because even you see that many people actually claim back in like many years ago that Israel wants to separate Iran, wants to separate, giving a part to Al-Ahwas, to the so-called Kurdish parties, whatever. But when Netanyahu said, "Okay, we respect Iran's territorial integrity," and always being consistent on his point for at least 8 years, since I saw his messages from 2018, so he has been always consistent about what he said. And what I'm going to say about, like other than the refinery, Southwest refinery that we talked about the school. So it's like true that the U.S. missile hit the school, but it was after the IRGC missile that went up and came down. So the U.S. wanted to target the IRGC base, which was close to the school, and actually from people that their family got killed, which was one of those schoolgirls in Minab, which was the video is on X. You can see from Kusha that she talked to a person which was had a family that like her daughter got killed in the Minab strike, that even the regime's management was so bad that they just brought they first called the families from hours ago, from an hour before the strike, when they knew that it would be a strike, and they just called the families. They didn't you know lead the children out to actually protect them. So they knew what will happen, and even many families that came to pick their children up, they also got killed as well, because that's how stupid these people were to handle the management very badly. Both stupid and evil at the same time, because because the rocket, the missile that went up and went down from the IRGC, so the um actually it was a mistake first by the RGC, and then the US hit that RGC base as well, which the school was next to that. So what I say is still we should blame the IRGC for that, because the IRGC didn't manage to actually evacuate the school, even when they knew from hours before this happens. And they, instead of leading the children out, they call families, and they just had an extremely destructive management, and that was a absolutely a catastrophic move to do from actually the education department of that era,
I understand what you're saying is
or
that
the school board.
instead of evacuating the school themselves, they told the parents to go get your kids, and that's not the right move, especially when you have a base right next to a school. All I'm saying is that in the perceptions of not just Iranians and many Iranians, but in the perceptions of the world, the U.S. hit a school with 2 Tomahawk missiles in the first hours of this war. This drains the war of legitimacy internationally. And I will make another point here, is one of the reasons why this war can't succeed, that it's very unlikely that this conflict will succeed, is because of Russia and China. They're going to do to America and Israel what the United States and Europe have been doing to Russia and Ukraine, which is bleeding it dry. And China and Russia see this, and it's obvious, as an opportunity. Here's a chance for us to really weaken America, impoverish America, give Iran just enough support, intelligence wise, material wise, to keep the fight going and hurt the United States. And so this is horrifically already turning into some version of World War III. And that is going to be very tragic, because World War III is going to be fought in Ukraine and now it seems Iran. And that is a real devastating thing for the country. I'm telling you that nothing good is going to come out of this. I'm an opponent of the regime. I would love nothing more for the regime to fall and for ordinary people to take over and peace and democracy come to the Islamic Republic of Iran. But this won't do it. This will only lead to a lot of pain, a lot of crying mothers, a lot of graves, a lot of war zones and destroyed buildings. I've been to Syria. I've been to Libya. I've seen what American power does in Iraq when war goes kind of exponentially escalating higher. And so this is where this is turning into. And I think that the chances of some kind of decent and successful outcome from this whole affair are zero at this point.
Yeah. Also, my final point is that like the outcomes, because how smart and Trump and Netanyahu moved throughout this war, and there's lack of leadership inside the system. I think the good outcomes will come in within a month or 2 months, because it's not going to be a long war that China and Russia are supplying the Islamic Republic, because they know the Islamic Republic is totally done. Maybe you have like some views because of your past experience with those previous situations of Libya and Syria and Iraq. Maybe you think that it's relevant to Iran. I don't think that's relevant, but we have our disagreements, and that's my final point. So, uh, did, because I have to go for we're getting ready for
Sure.
the
Happy
Nowruz because we're
Nowruz
in 10
Mubarak.
minutes, and wish
Nowruz
you a great
Piruz.
Nowruz,
Okay,
Nowruz Piruz.
great. Thank you so much. Thanks for a great conversation. You have a great weekend. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Badlands podcast. Again, I'm Borzu Deragahi. I am a longtime journalist and founder of borzu.substack.com, Badlands newsletter. Thank you.